Hi. I am, as Diana indicated, another one of Father Pulser's graduate students. Started at the DRSW, as we called it. Today it's the Office of Ethnohistorical Research, in '92. Just looking for work to help support myself in graduate school, and I'm still here almost 20 years later. I just wanted to talk a little bit about how Father Pulser's legacy continues in our office in many ways. We continue to work on these documentary history projects. We continue to employ graduate students to work on the transcription, the translation, and now the annotation and working with some contextualization of the documents as well. We definitely follow his procedures, which he instilled into all of us. That involves verification, verification, and verification. So every single step of the way. And this is important and has to do with his own translation of Kino's Favores Celestiales, which is known to many of you, I'm sure, as Kino's historical memoirs, due to the translation that Herbert Bolton did in 1919. That was reissued in 1948, but to my knowledge, there has not been another English translation of his work done since. And this was one that Father Pulser had just about finished he had finished the translation, but it had not gone through all of those verification processes yet. So recently, in the last year, we have obtained a copy of the electronic files as well as the paper manuscript that Father Pulser had put together. And we are currently seeking funds to try to see this whole thing through to publication. One of the first things that we will need to do is to take the transcription that he was working from and verify that. The next step will be then to take his translation and compare that, verify it against the verified transcription. These are steps that I feel quite confident he would have fully approved of, although they will delay the process considerably. Then he had not had the opportunity yet to do any annotation. So we will be working at putting the translation into context, getting a nice introduction prepared. So I would anticipate this would probably take something in the area of 3 to 4 years, which I know sounds horrendously long, but there is a lot to do and we need to fit it in with other projects that we're working on at the time. It is something that's very important to us, though, and we'll be sure to get the word out to people. I am currently also the editor of the SMRC Revista, which is that publication Diana talked about that, from the Southwestern Mission Research Center. So we will be sure to get notice out to all of our members as well as through other lines of communication. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Father Pulser, the Jesuit brother and friend, is Father Chris Corbally, Vice Director of Vatican Observatories for Board and, what is that?
Research Group. Let me explain.
Okay, I'll let you explain. Father Chris?
So, how many of you knew Charlie? Fair number. And in that case, you can corroborate or otherwise my story is verified. Wonderful. So just briefly why I'm here. I'm a British province Jesuit. I work for the Vatican Observatory, which has a headquarters, as you'd imagine, near Rome. But towards the end of 1980, it established a research base here hosted by the University of Arizona. And the reason for doing that was in the 70s we were looking for another location for our prime telescope at Castel Gandolfo, and simply didn't find one. Nearby in Italy, Sardinia was explored, and the nearest would seem to be the Canary Islands. Well, at that time we then had a change in director who was for long was actually on the faculty of the University of Arizona. When he was appointed director in 1978, Father George Coyne was actually sitting on the chair of Peter. That is Peter Strickmatter, who was the then fairly new director of Stewart Observatory, University of Arizona. And Peter needed to get away for a sabbatical, which long overdue. So George Coyne took on the position as sort of acting director, and hence sitting on the chair of Peter Strickmatter for a year. So that's how the Vatican Observatory happened to come here and have to establish a second place, a research base, known to its friend as Vatican Observatory West. So our group came here. I arrived after I'd finished a degree in Toronto. I arrived here in 1984. I'd had a couple of visits beforehand, sort of en route to other places, and when I'd just finished my thesis, so I knew the setup here, and certainly obviously I'd met Charlie. Actually, I think it was my second visit, just when I'd finished my thesis in Toronto, that the timing was perfect because it was April, and guess what I was able to go on?
Mission tour.
The mission tour, yes, exactly. Another founded by Charlie and friends. The mission tour, so that was a wonderful introduction. So I have to blame, mission tour and Charlie for my regard for Padre Kino. I suppose too, what I blame Charlie for is for introducing me to various people, some of whom are obviously in this room. Charlie really had a wonderful gift of friendship, and he also had a wonderful gift for making enemies too. Be neutral about Charlie. You loved him or hated him, and so a good number, I know, of his friends are here this evening, and so Charlie did introduce me, I realized, to some wonderful people here in Tucson. So arriving from England via Toronto, it was a question of, a strange place. Charlie took me and introduced me to people, one of whom, obviously, is Felipe Jacome. You wouldn't, not part of your family, of course. No,
I'm the smarter, better looking one.
Exactly, that's why I didn't believe it's part of your family. So, Felipe and his wife Karen, so we'll continue to meet regularly, and he'll drag me into things and what, as well as what is his game, Axis and Allies. So that's a game of naval strategy played on a board. Have you played that at all?
No, I'm not smart enough.
Well, it's his wife you want to fear. Yeah, Karen is the real one for Axis and Allies. She'll blow every ship that goes out of the water. But this is part of the fun, and I know Charlie would have enjoyed playing Axis and Allies. That's why I think of it. He loved computer games, so and would play those. So he was certainly a game person who described to how he'd terribly inventive. Loved cooking as well. I'm thinking of when my sister and her husband Andy were visiting in mid-90s. Just for a few days in Tucson, then I took them for a little tour around the state to show them just how small Arizona was, and then they were off to San Francisco for the end of their stay. But at Kino House, of course, that's the name, established, I think it was 1968 or 9, anyway, a good while ago, to accommodate the Jesuits who were gathering in Tucson. And so Charlie and George Coyne, whom I mentioned, former director of our observatory, kind of established Kino House with the help of good friends in town who found the funds to buy the place, to help buy the place. So long time Kino House. So anyway, my sister and husband Andy were staying at Kino House, and of course we have to have Mexican food. We have this wonderful cook Maggie, who is still with us from the early 80s. She's still with us in the new house where the Jesuit observatory is now. So what to cook for these? So I asked, of course, my sister Anne whether she liked Mexican food, and she put on a very brave face and said, yes. So I think so. It was implied by that. So what did Charlie and Maggie sort of, as it were, cook up between them? Indeed, the sopa de ajos, which is so beautifully mild, and you can't even guess that it's made of garlic. It's so wonderful. Oh, yeah, absolutely gorgeous. And then, because I think it was October time, it was chilies in nogada, that was appropriate at that season, and those were just beautiful as well. And I think that converted my sister Anne to Mexican food. And certainly Charlie had been well. Another wonderful thing Charlie showed me was one spring break. We had a Maryland province Jesuit with us who was recovering from illness, so he was with us a good couple of months. Maybe even a bit longer, so the first sort of months of the year. So come mid-March and spring break for the university, Charlie said, let's go into Mexico and let's make a trip over the mountains. I need to see how things sort of link up over the mountains, the Sierra Madres, and into Chihuahua. So we did. What a wonderful, wonderful trip. We started heading down to Hermosillo. He knew the Archbishop there, Archbishop Quintero Arce, and the Archbishop invites, we're having a celebration at the seminary for the parents of the seminarians. Do come and join in the Mass. A wonderful occasion. And then we sort of set off in Charlie's, golden burro. Burrodoro, that's right. The Chevy pickup over the mountains, and what a grand adventure. Charlie sort of driving along, and sort of the big Charlie, and some rather frightened people running in the fields besides us, because they were growing guess what up in the mountains. And thought Charlie might be official.